This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is the Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, as always, is Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And Dave Oster is not here, unfortunately.
Hola, mis amigos.
The schedule has been a problem this week. We were supposed to give you our NBA predictions for the upcoming season. However, schedules did not play into our favor, and we are not going to be doing it this week. We do have a great podcast for you still. Predictions will be coming for you next week.
The Warriors win. Good night, everybody.
Because we planned it out because it's the McGregor and Nurmagomedov fight on October 6th.
Sean can't miss that.
Yeah, we're going to be recording that afternoon and then watching the fight that night. So we do have plans for that. Today we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler again. We're talking about Klay Thompson possibly leaving Golden State after the season is over. And we'll be talking about Anthony Davis, the new signee of Clutch Sports, and his possibility of going to the Los Angeles Lakers, because Bill Simmons is saying that you can now produce AD Laker jerseys because it's already written in stone. But before we jump into all that, we do want you to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you want to be on a podcast, picking a segment each and every month, talk about it, head over to patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. You can be featured on a podcast. You can talk about what you want with the podcast you want. It's a fun time, with Jake, with our boy Z, with Christian in the past. Always a fun time to have people on. Bill as well. So if you do want to be on a podcast, check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But Ricky, let's jump into a topic we have talked about so many times, and let's just go through some of the topics. NBA trade rumors. Where will the Timberwolves trade Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler trade rumors. Is he really the problem? Jimmy Butler trade. Did the Bulls get enough to rebuild? Jimmy Butler trade. Are the T-Wolves legit? NBA trade rumors. Should the Chicago Bulls move on from Jimmy Butler? Should the Bulls trade or keep Jimmy Butler? Should the Bulls trade Jimmy Butler? How should the Bulls build around Jimmy Butler?
Hey, man. He's an interesting guy, man.
A lot of changes and a lot of different ways to pretty much talk about the same thing over and over again.
And some people are saying he should just be the Dos Aggies guy because he's the most interesting man in the world. Man.
I disagree with that. I still think it's LeBron. But all this to come to, Jimmy Butler has now pretty much said, this is coming from Mark Stein, that his agent tells the Timberwolves that he wants to be traded to the Miami Heat. The Rockets are apparently aggressively pursuing him. Thank you. It's been a long day. Aggressively pursuing him. And now we also still have the Clippers, the Knicks, the Nets out there. A lot of teams are still vying for Jimmy Butler and bringing him in. Even the Sixers were talking to him, and the T-Wolves threw out Ben Simmons for Jimmy Butler, which is laughable. But let's talk about this. Let's break down some of the possibilities. Where do you think right now Jimmy Butler's going to end up after taking in the past week of commotion?
I mean, if I'm looking at a team that is, like, let's say he is going to get traded before the season, I think part of me thinks Miami, only because Pat Riley's going to get it done. He's going to get it done, going to bring Jimmy in, and then we basically have the Marquette boys and D. Wade and Jimmy Butler playing it out in Miami. But there's also a side to me that's thinking, are the Timberwolves are their value of Jimmy Butler, is that going to be so high to where a deal never gets done?
Well, that's the thing right now. We'll just reporting that and this is from his most recent article, the Minnesota Timberwolves asking price to trade All-Star forward Jimmy Butler remains quality veterans, top prospect, future assets, and salary cap relief, which is presently too steep of a package for interested teams, league sources tell ESPN. Obviously, we heard about the Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler trade that was floated out there by Tibbs. Obviously, that's not going to happen in any reasonable or logical future. And I think it is too steep, but again, with the pressure that is being put on Thibs and the owner, by the ownership of Minnesota, I think a deal is going to happen. They're going to have to cave at some point. Now, I said by this time next week we'd be doing a podcast or Thibs would be fired. I think that was probably a little bit too rash, but I do think that if a deal's not made within the first month of basketball being played, I think Tibbs is definitely going to be removed as GM because a deal needs to be made as soon as possible because Jimmy Butler, we don't know what's going to happen. Will he just sit out? If he's not traded and he's not moved, will he even play for the Timberwolves?
I mean, why not? Why not just sit out? I mean, there's all contract things with that, but it's like if you're sitting there like, I don't want to play for this team, what's stopping Jimmy Butler from saying, "Nah, I'm good. I ain't gonna play"?
And that's something that I at least appreciate. I think this is something I wasn't able to at least say last week with the difference between Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler was the fact that Kawhi really wasn't able to come out and say, "I don't want to be here anymore" during the season, and he kept hiding behind that injury. Where Jimmy Butler at least came out and said, "I want to be traded. Here are the places I want to be traded to. Get a deal done." And I think right now the Timberwolves want to make sure they're getting the best option, but I think also Thibodeau is at least more concerned on keeping Jimmy Butler than he is trading him because there was even recent reports that Thibs tried to at least reach out to Jimmy Butler,
say, "Hey,
and bring him back in.
You want to be here, right? We really want you here, man. We don't want to see you go."
And Jimmy shot it down. So a trade's going to happen, and I think it's got to be happening within the next month. And by the end of October, if something's not happening, I think Thibs is definitely going to be on the hot seat for sure, or at least the intense hot seat because he's definitely on a hot seat right now. And I agree with you that I think Miami's probably the most likely option just because they do have a lot of contracts they can move around. They have Tyler Johnson. They have James Johnson. Goran Dragic has been a name that I think is a very interesting name that's been thrown around. And there's also teams that would be willing to do a 3-team deal. And one of the ones that I've seen was Goran Dragic going back to the Phoenix Suns, Jimmy going to the Miami Heat, and then obviously young players and assets going to the Timberwolves to give them some cap relief. So I think the most likely one is the Heat, but I don't know if that's exactly going to happen because while I understand why that would be a good place for Jimmy Butler. Not only do I think he would be absolutely phenomenal on that Heat team because, again, he's a guy that kind of fits the mold of those players he likes. He's just that much more talented than the players they have. He does everything well. He fits into a team. He's able to move the ball around, and he's going to be with his buddy D. Wade, who obviously they formed a kinship in their times with Chicago. But the one thing that I think is holding back that deal is just the fact that Miami doesn't have those intriguing assets for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We look at their future picks. We obviously know that 2021st pick is going to Philadelphia. Is it Philadelphia? Yeah, it's Philadelphia because it was traded to the Suns. Now it's in Philadelphia for the Zaire Smith, Mikal Bridges thing. And outside of young players, I mean, you look at Bam Adebayo and then also Justice Winslow and Josh Richardson as well. Those are really the only 3 young assets they have. But I don't think they want to move on from Richardson because he's such a talented player. Justice is a guy that hasn't really hit his ceiling quickly enough to really show his potential and his worth. And then also Bam was so fantastic, but Bam's not a franchise changer even as top peak.
Yeah, but for me, and this goes back to a conversation we had way, way, way long ago. If you're the Miami Heat and you can get Jimmy Butler and then lock him down long term, I would take Jimmy Butler over Josh Richardson, over a Bam because of what type of player he is now. The only question with Jimmy now that I have, and this is a team that I'm going to trade for him, I know you're going to get a guy where it's like, hey, I'm going to come in and work, but I'm going to be honest. The last 2 ends to the last 2 teams you've been on, you were, I'm going to call you a cancer in the locker room in Chicago, where basically Rajon Rondo had to say, hey, dude, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah, there was a division.
Why are you doing treating the rookies like this? And now you've got in Minnesota the whole, hey, I don't want to work with these. And I know in Minnesota it's more of like Jimmy thinking, hey, these young kids don't want to work. But it's like Jimmy Butler and young kids now, is that really going to work? And with the Heat, I think the thing that could mesh good or well is Eric Spoelstra being the head coach. I think Eric Spoelstra can work well with Jimmy Butler, and with this being D. Wade's last year, I think Jimmy Butler could help get the most out of D. Wade, who D. Wade isn't what he used to be. He basically wasn't the number one guy ever since LeBron came to Miami. Yeah, I know it's Wade County, but I'm saying like producing, he's not the number one guy because of age.
Even when it matters, I mean, the big thing about getting Jimmy Butler is signing that extension. Yeah. We know that this is D. Wade's. Well, we know this is D. Wade's last ride, so D. Wade really doesn't matter. I mean,
it's his Derek Jeter season.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be nice that they get reunited. But the biggest thing I think, and the reason I'm not really worried with the things you bring up about Jimmy Butler going to this Heat team is one thing that we have seen out of them is we might not see this crazy amount of talent, but we do see a lot of maturity out of this Miami Heat team. I think that's a credit to Spoelstra. I think that's a credit to Pat Riley. and their ability to bring in the right players. And yes, this team has young players. Tyler Johnson's under the age of 27. Justice is under the age of 27. Bam's under the age of 27. Josh Richardson under the age of 27. They do have a fairly young group of guys there, but this is still a very mature team, and you see them consistently making the playoffs, especially with D Wade leaving, with LeBron leaving, with Chris Bosh leaving. They really didn't lose that much of a step. Yes, they're not winning titles, they're not going to the NBA Finals, but I don't think anyone really expected them to be where they are and having this consistent, sustained success. I think that's a credit to the players that they've brought in, they've scouted, and obviously to Spoelstra and to Pat Riley. And I think that Jimmy Butler would be a nice fit in Miami. Again, I just think that the actual makings of a deal will be difficult. And I think the Rockets actually have a very intriguing case to put together, because you look at this Eric Gordon possibility of him going to Minnesota. It's interesting because Eric Gordon going to that team makes them more dangerous offensively. He brings the ability to have Jeff Teague play off ball, have Jeff Teague run a second unit. He also has the ability to run the second unit himself and keep up that scoring. So if they do and will worry about losing scoring when Jimmy Butler leaves, bringing in Eric Gordon would be absolutely able to supplement that loss. And I think Eric Gordon, we obviously talk very highly of him in that six-man ranking. He's a fantastic six-man, but I also think he'd be doing great as a starter as well. And I think that would at least help, what's it called? Lessen the blow of Jimmy Butler leaving. And I think this team, bringing on Eric Gordon wouldn't really take them out of the playoff race, but does it really give them enough when it comes to young assets and also cap relief?
Well, and the thing that I threw out too, because Dave and I were talking about this to ourselves as we finished up Too Old to Game last night, we were talking about the Rockets, and I threw out the thing of what, do the Rockets try to trade Melo for Jimmy? And even Dave was like, maybe. To me, it's I wouldn't want to give up Eric Gordon if I am the Houston Rockets, because I'm not getting into the debate of Melo coming off the bench or being in the starting lineup. Well, I don't care about that debate. But
real quick, Melo did even come out and say whatever helps will help the team will do it.
I get that, and then you hear others saying that his wife's saying something else. I'm not getting into that. What I am getting into is, let's say he does come off the bench, you then trade Eric Gordon for Jimmy Butler. Yeah, your starting lineup is getting Jimmy Butler. There is no doubt that is a plus for your team. But when the first unit ain't out there, the second unit now is going to be run by Carmelo Anthony, not Eric Gordon.
Which I'd be fine with, because a big thing that I want with Melo is I don't think Melo can play. Yeah, well, I don't think Melo is going to be able to play team basketball per se. And I think if you have Melo just run down and score, I think he could still do that. He can still post up. It's going to slow down that offense for sure. They're not going to be able to play the same offense they would with Eric Gordon leading that second unit, compared to Melo. But I still think that Melo running the second unit would be absolutely fine. I don't understand a way that would be able to work either, because if you just signed Melo, so you're going to have to wait until I think January to trade him. So that's even going to push back that deal. So you're not going to be able to get rid of Jimmy Butler right away if you're making that deal around Melo. Then obviously you're going to have to add young assets onto there as well, and you still need to make the contracts match. I don't think Melo's going to be in that deal at all. So I think Melo's definitely going to be a Houston Rocket, and I think it would be smart for Houston, because obviously Eric Gordon plays a crucial part to that team, but a big part that he does play is, again, guard ability, and a big reason why this Houston Rockets offense is so dangerous is because of the multiple guard looks that they throw out there. Even before Chris Paul came, it was even with Eric Gordon when him and James Harden would show the same looks when they were both out there on the floor. Having multiple guards is huge, and Jimmy Butler can still handle the ball. Jimmy Butler can still be a guy that can play the three, defend the threes, and go into that starting lineup. I think it makes them so much more dangerous. And again, we look at the Houston Rockets lacked last year was health. Jimmy Butler has been fairly healthy throughout his career, and also clutch, because obviously we look at that Game 7, them missing 2 of 26 shots or whatever, and Jimmy Butler, for as much crap I've given to him for not being a number one player in the NBA, in my mind, he has been clutch. He has been able to hit shots in big moments, and I think that would be huge for Houston, because having that in crucial, tight games when you're going up against Golden State, that can swing a series, and I think that would be absolutely huge to not only bring clutch offense, but clutch defense to this
team. The question that I have. would Eric Gordon for Jimmy Butler suffice? Would that be, in your mind, not Minnesota's mind, what else from the Rockets would you, like, and that's the thing I'm thinking about with the Rockets and the Heat. What else would you have? Would it be and I know they can't trade him right now, this would be a later thing, would it be a guy like Marquise Chris? Would it be one of the, like, the Rockets to me don't have enough guys on the team to say, yeah, we can give you this along with Eric Gordon.
That's why you're going to need a third team in there. And that's the basis of why these trades, at least to Miami and Houston, have been using a third team. So I think obviously adding Eric Gordon, sending him to Minnesota would be necessary. He does make less than Jimmy, but also I think he does have a player option. So it's like $7 million less. So Jimmy would have to go to Houston. Eric Gordon would go to Minnesota. I think they would still need a Minnesota that is another either veteran player that could help them win or a younger player that could, again, obviously, keep that future going. I think TJ Warren could be a very interesting person if you want to use him because he's now a guy that's going to be a six-man, adding scoring, and he still has youth on his side. I think you can send him to Minnesota. And then, obviously, Phoenix would have to take on a contract, and I think one of those contracts could be a Gorgie Dieng, although they do have a ton of centers. I don't know exactly what the deal is, but I think Phoenix would definitely be a team where they would have to give Minnesota that young player you're looking for, and it wouldn't come from Houston, and then Houston would take on Jimmy Butler, and then Phoenix would take on picks, and then also cap relief.
Well, and that's why for me, I'm playing around with the trade machine, and even with the Rockets,
we shouldn't be allowed to use this.
No, I know that, but
I'm just throwing it out there. If people are like, these trades make no sense, we shouldn't be allowed to use this.
But I'm basically saying from the point with the Rockets trade that I just tried to get it to go green, and just for the Rockets, all they would get is Jimmy Butler. They would have to give up Eric Gordon and somebody else to make the money work. And that's where with the Rockets, I don't know if a third team is going to want the Rockets trash because it would be trash that the Rockets aren't using. One team that I know you've brought up the Phoenix Suns quite a bit. One team I'm looking at an SB Nation article, and they're saying don't forget about the Kings because the Kings could be a team. You mentioned Dieng's contract. They could be a team that says, hey, we're going to take Dieng's contract, but in return for taking this contract, we're going to want either a first-round pick. We're going to want either Miami's pick. Like, we're going to need something in addition to basically taking your salary load, getting this salary off your books. And the Houston one I'm not happy in, but the Heat one I think could work. Minnesota would get Goran Dragic, Richardson, and Winslow.
Wait, what?
The Minnesota would get Goran, Richardson, and Winslow.
That's a lot.
The Heat would get Jimmy Butler and Costa Koufis. The Kings would get Dieng. And then put your picks and wherever you want.
But that's way too much for Minnesota to get. That's not Jimmy Butler's trade value.
But and that's the thing where I put two of them in, and I wanted to see if both of them would work. The other one I had, take Winslow out of it. So you're only getting Dragic and Richardson. Is that still too high?
What I've heard is they don't want to give up Richardson. And if they're going to pick between Richardson and Winslow, it'd be trading Winslow. And Goran would not be going to Minnesota. He would be going to Phoenix because they need that point guard help. So that is I've heard.
This trade this is with the Kings and not Phoenix. That's why I wouldn't put
But
Goran
even then,
Dragic
they don't need a point guard.
Yeah, but
so I don't understand the Dragic. The Dragic thing. The only thing that I've heard is at least is again going to Phoenix. I've also heard that Miami wants to get rid of Dion Waiters.
That's another name I was going to throw out
that.
there.
But that's not dependent on a Jimmy Butler trade. They just want to get rid of his contract, which also makes sense because he's not a guy that I look at and he doesn't really scream that he fits into that Miami system.
I mean, what if it was I'm going to play around a little bit here. We're going to take Richardson off. I want to see I don't even know if Minnesota would do this. No, that trade would fail from the Heat. They would need something else. Like even a Waiters and Winslow, you would need to give up something else if you're going to go ahead and get Jimmy Butler. Let me play with one thing here, see if this would work.
Welcome to the
wouldn't work
Fast
either.
Break podcast where we do a ton of research.
Basically, in order for the Heat to get Jimmy Butler, the second I take Goran Dragic out of the deal at all, it starts failing.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like you need Dragic in that deal one way or another.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. I mean, again, Dragic needs to be in there because he's a guy that is, again, kind of fading. And the thing that I think is going to hurt that, though, is if you take away Dragic, that doesn't make Miami a playoff team, I think, because you're getting better with adding Jimmy Butler to the team, but also you're going to be getting rid of a Winslow, you're going to be getting rid of a Richardson, you're also talking about getting rid of a Waiters. You're losing a lot of depth on that team, and that's what made that team really a playoff team, was their ability to go to anybody on any given night. And Jimmy Butler would be that guy, but that's also an increased workload for a guy who just suffered an injury last year. And I'm worried about Miami's ability to, again, help him with stars. And obviously, next year they're going to have cap room and we have a ton of free agents that are going to be coming free. But that doesn't mean it's enough because Jimmy Butler has just kept pushing his way out of places left and right. Chicago, it wasn't the right timeline for him. He pushed himself out. Minnesota, it wasn't the right timeline for him. He pushed himself out. Miami, it could be again after 1 year. If he doesn't feel like it's the right fit, he could try to push himself out again. He could just, obviously I think the trade would be dependent on him re-signing long term. But if he's not sold with what this team looks like once the trade's completed, then it's not a guarantee that he'd sign. A big thing about what he wants to do is win. And he might be a little bit toxic in the way he's going about it, but it's been very clear that he does want to win. And I think that if Miami does get rid of too much and Jimmy Butler misses the playoffs this year, I think that could be detrimental to their ability to keep Jimmy Butler around. Unless you have a guy like D Wade who's able to sell him on Miami, sell him on Pat, sell him on Spoelstra. I'd be concerned about that. It's not a major concern, but it is a concern.
Jimmy Butler to me is that guy who is like, I'm going to go work here. Then after a year, I don't like it. I'm going to go work here. I don't like that. I'm going to go work. Like, he's not the guy where it's like, I'm going to stick it out here 2 to 3 years. I know basketball, different than regular day, everyday job. But it's like, usually in the workforce, it's like, hey, try to keep that job for 2 to 3 years. Then look for the next one. Don't be jumping around job to job, which it seems like Jimmy Butler has been doing recently after his long stint with the Bulls. Another thing that is interesting is Kevin Pelton has an article where he says, second, some teams, most notably the Miami Heat, can't sign Butler in free agency next summer because they don't have the salary cap space. Miami would have to make a trade to get Butler either now or via sign and trade as a free agent. So it's like if you're Miami, this is the only way you're going to get your hands on Jimmy Butler. And then we bring in the other side of the argument with Jimmy is he's a guy that could be put into the same category as a Kyrie Irving in my book. Kyrie wanted out of Cleveland because he wanted to be the guy. Jimmy's another one of those. I want to be the guy. And then you bring into what is your thought about guys that want to be the guy, because I'll be honest, I agree with the Herd said it when he was talking about Jimmy last week. Why can't guys be like Steph? Be like LeBron, where it's like, I know LeBron's different, best player in the world. He doesn't have to worry about anyone being better than him. But like Steph Curry, yeah, Kevin Durant, you're going to come in. You'll be the finals MVP. I'll take less points. But it's cool. We'll win championships. I'm fine with it. Instead of being like, no. I have to be the guy here in Golden State.
I think it's just an ego thing because, again, KD was already the guy.
Yeah.
Steph was already the guy. You already had those moments. It's easier to put that aside and be, the guys on the greatest team in the NBA. I think it's tough, especially when you're not on a team like Golden State where you're, for sure guaranteed a spot in the finals, let alone pretty much a 75 to 80% chance of winning the finals no matter who you're playing because of how stacked that team is. So I think you can't look at Golden State and be like, well, they're doing it because...
No, I'm saying like...
But I'm
not necessarily Golden State, but just
I'm not saying you, I'm saying anybody.
Yeah, it's like, but why can't players, like, I know it's easier said than done, but it's like, if I'm a team, I don't know if I want I don't know if I want a guy like Jimmy Butler who's going to be like, no, I want to be the guy. No, I want the guy that's like, hey, I'm going to come here. I'm going to try to get other free agents to come with me, and we're going to do this together, even if he's the leading scorer, I'm the leading scorer.
I don't think, again, we've heard things, and it's not really what Jimmy's saying. He doesn't want to be the only guy on the team. He wants to win. So I think that what he wants to see is, have a guy like Kyrie next to him and be able to say, we're the guys. I don't think it's exactly that. I think the biggest thing, though, is at least it's Jimmy Butler and Kyrie together doing it instead of within Minnesota, they're giving 5-year deals to Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns, where Jimmy Butler was the addition to that. It wasn't Jimmy Butler being added to.
Well, and
I think that's what it is. It's not really, again, about the stardoms of the team. It's who's being added to whom. Who's the addition? Who's the guy that's helping the other guy win?
Well, and the thing that
what
also
Jimmy
plays
wants is,
into
again,
it,
Kyrie to help him, not him helping Kyrie or him helping Cat and Wiggins.
And the other thing that plays into it too is Jimmy also doesn't like Wiggins and Cat because he thinks that they're lazy.
Well, yeah.
And you're going to get, it's like, wait, this guy's lazy and you're going to give him a max deal? No, screw that guy. There's that also little sprinkling onto the situation.
But I'm at least talking separate of the Minnesota thing. Again, with the guy conversation. I don't think it's, he wants to be the only guy and, he wants to have a heroic Superman effort where he's bringing guys like, a LeBron James where, yes, he does have a Kevin Love, but obviously it's his team. I don't think it's really, he wants to have his own team. He just wants to be, again, someone that, you look at that team and it's like, all right, Jimmy was the first piece.
He wants a quality veteran next to him.
Yeah.
That he can lean on and know, hey.
It could be a star.
This guy's going to work.
I think he could be a star like a Kyrie.
But like this guy who's like, hey, this guy is going to work just as hard as I am for the same goal. Instead of it's like, these kids are playing Fortnite. What are we doing here? Are we playing basketball or playing Fortnite?
I think, and it's with, again, at least say that final thing. Yeah, but final thing on that with Cat and Wiggins, they don't have that urgency to win a title. Where they're not even in their primes yet, and Jimmy's in his prime. He needs to, I think, have that at least ability to say, all right, I at my best, at my prime ability, my peak ability, I was able to go out there and at least try my best to win a title. And he probably didn't feel that way in Minnesota. So if he does go to Brooklyn and Kyrie joins him, I think it'd be fine because again, if they're competing for a title, I think that's the thing that makes the most sense. But let's move into the at least the the crux of this. Is that even a word? Let's just get into our predictions.
Throwing a Harry Potter reference.
Let's get into the predictions. Where's he going?
I'm gonna say my number one is I'm gonna stick by my guns and say that the T-Wolves asking price will be too much. He will leave in free agency, but if a deal gets done this offseason before the season or early into the season, I think it's Miami.
Gotcha. A crux is a word. It's a noun. It's the decisive or most important point of an issue, and that is exactly what this is. Where is Jimmy Butler going? I agree that he will be dealt. Well, you're not saying he's going to be dealt. I think he will be dealt. Again, I'm not changing my position on that. I think he will be dealt either before the season, which is in 18 days, or at least very early into the season. And I think that it's still. I still feel strong about the Clippers. Because yes, the asking price is high, but if they're able to fold on some of their younger players, I think that Jimmy Butler would definitely go there. I think that they would be smart in getting a Jimmy Butler. I think Miami's a good fit, but I don't think they will get him. And then I think you look at Houston. So I would say if I had to rank them, Clippers 1, 2 would be Houston, and then 3. I know they will not separate with Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, or Nikola Jokic.
The Nugs.
But I think the Nuggets could still be a possibility. And that team with Nikola Jokic, Jimmy Butler, Gary Harris, and Jamal Murray is for sure a 3 seed in the East. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Where is Jimmy Butler going? Is he going to be traded? Is he not going to be traded? If he is going to be traded, where is he going to be traded to? Let us know down in the comments below.